Thank you for joining the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce webinar on Chamber Legal Advice. We're joined by our partner organisation, Composite Legal Expenses, who will be giving an overview of legal, HR and tax advice line available to members, as well as the legal expenses insurance. My name's Atif. I'm one of the project managers at the Chamber. And our guest speaker today is Michael Jenkins, Head of Legal Advice at Composite Legal Expenses. If you're tuning in live, please feel free to use the chat facility to share any questions you may have. So without any further ado, I'm gonna hand over to Michael.
Hi everyone, I hope everyone can hear me okay. Thanks for the introduction, Atif. So as Atif mentioned, my name is Michael Jenkins. I'm a solicitor and I manage the legal advice helpline on behalf of the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce. And we provide a package of inclusive membership benefits that you'll all have access to. So really, I want to kind of talk you through those benefits, how you can access the service, and perhaps talk a little bit about the advice line at the moment. We're experiencing a high volume of calls in relation to the current crisis. So I want to make you aware that it is available. We will get back to everyone who calls, and you might find it really useful at this time, particularly dealing with employees and things like that. So I'm wondering how to move forward. Okay, on the slides. Okay, so just to run you through the membership benefits that you've got access to. You've got access to a 24/7 legal advice helpline. That includes HR advice and tax advice. You've also got access to our online document services, and you've got access to £100,000 worth of legal expenses cover if you need it. So these products, like I say, they're all inclusive as part of your membership. So there's no additional charges, no upsell or anything like that. We'll always do what we can because you've already got access to these benefits through your chamber membership. The benefits complement each other. So the legal advice, our team will give you advice over the phone. If they feel you need access to the online documents, they will direct you to the relevant documents that you might need. Obviously, you can go on and access them yourself anyway. And if you've taken our advice and that doesn't go well and you end up with a claim against you, then in certain circumstances you can benefit from the legal expenses insurance cover. So just to talk a little bit about each of those products. Initially, if you've got any legal questions at all, you can always call the legal advice helpline. The contact number is on the screen. You can also request advice through our website portal by filling in the form. So if you do need advice at the moment, that's probably the best way to get in touch with us. Try and keep our phone lines free and fill in that form, and an advisor will call you back. So the advice line is usually based in Cardiff. At the moment, we're completely remotely working, as I expect many people are, and all our disaster recovery plans have come into place, and we can still provide our services to you. So you should notice no difference in that service, apart from at the moment our increased volumes in calls. So it's any area of law, completely confidential and secure. I'm a solicitor. The team are all solicitors as well, and you'd be in exactly the same position as if you speak to a solicitor in private practice. The only limitation on our service really will come around us not being able to take paperwork in, but as much as we can give you over the phone, we'll give you that advice, and I'm sure you'll find that useful if you need it. Employment solicitors you've got access to, so any questions around furlough at the moment, give us a call and we'll do our best to guide you through. tax, VAT, we've got specialist advisors who can give you guidance there as well. So really at the moment, it is worthwhile using the service. The online resources, so like I said, these online resources complement the legal advice offering, and we've got quite a comprehensive package of documents that you can access. There's know-how guides, there's precedents, template letters, the kind of things if you need to go through a disciplinary process with an employee, all the templates are there for you, along with guides as well. Debt recovery, that sort of thing, there's also guides there and template letters. In relation to the legal expenses insurance, there's £100,000 worth of legal expenses insurance cover for every member, and that will cover you for the following kinds of disputes. So it'll cover you for employment disputes. If you call us for advice, you follow our advice in relation to terminating someone's employment, then that employee brings a claim to an employment tribunal, we can look to get a solicitor appointed to help you defend that claim. So really worth giving us a call, particularly in relation to employment matters, and particularly at the moment when we are in an unusual situation, to put it lightly, and the law is changing quite significantly on a daily basis. Since I wrote this the other day, we've had some updates which I'll go through with you as well. Criminal prosecution, defence and health and safety, you've got legal cover there. Property legal protection, so if there's nuisance trespass issues that involve the commercial property, then we can get involved. If you get a dispute with your landlord, for example, over dilapidations or something like that, there's an allowance for court and jury service if your employees have to attend. Tax and VAT investigation cover, data protection defence, and personal injury cover, which covers your employees as well. So worth making your employees aware, particularly if they have any injuries or anything like that, that they've got access to this legal expenses cover if they need it. Okay, so in terms of the current sort of crisis that we're in at the moment, and I think everyone will be experiencing different problems with their own businesses. These are the types of questions that we're getting at the moment from members across our legal advice service. So these are the kind of things you can call us and we can give you advice. Now, I'm going to run through some of these. It's just important to note that this isn't legal advice as such. Give us a call if you want that specific legal advice, because we would want to make sure that we went through the specific circumstances with you. But the kind of things that are unusual and we're being asked at the moment are things like, do we have to pay employees who are medically advised to self-isolate? So we had some changes to the statutory sick pay regulations recently, and anyone who's advised to self-isolate, for example, because they have a family member with the coronavirus, or they have the coronavirus themselves, or suspect to have the coronavirus, the symptoms with a cough or a fever, then they will now qualify for statutory sick pay. The government have introduced a scheme as well that allows you to reclaim that statutory sick pay if you're an employer with less than 250 employees. And there've also been some changes made around that being available from the first day of sickness rather than the fourth day of sickness. Another question that we're getting come up quite a lot is, what if employees don't want to come to work because they've got concerns about the coronavirus? Now, this might be a situation where they're not actually unwell, and they are concerned that by coming to work, they might catch the virus. Now, I think in normal circumstances, if your employees were well to work and you're expecting them to be in work, then you potentially be looking at a situation of unauthorized absence, and we could advise you on a disciplinary process. Obviously, these circumstances are very different. I think we've got to be very careful now, perhaps consider with those employees the reasons behind why they've got those concerns, as to why they're not turning up to work. Look at whether or not they perhaps have any underlying conditions, and perhaps are more susceptible to this virus, and consider whether or not it's worth allowing them to take holidays or unpaid leave, or even whether they can actually be furloughed, because that can be a possibility, that they can be potentially selected for furlough before other employees. So worth thinking about that. We would be of the opinion that if you did dismiss an employee who had concerns about turning up to work as a result of the coronavirus, then you could risk a automatic unfair dismissal claim on the basis that the employee has concerns over their health and safety, that the workplace wouldn't be safe for them. So we would advise caution, and worst case scenario, I think you'd be in a position where you probably say to them, well, you might want to take a period of unpaid leave. We're also being asked questions about employees who are vulnerable as well, and whether they qualify for SSP. And the answer to this is no. At the moment, they don't qualify. So unless they're medically advised to self-isolate by the guidance that we've got around having a dry cough or a fever, or their family member has, then if they are vulnerable but with no symptoms, or with no family members with symptoms, then they won't qualify at the moment for SSP. So I think it's really important to be talking to those employees about what they feel comfortable doing, whether they can work from home. There is an area here where pregnant employees who you might still need in the workplace would potentially need to be suspended on full pay. So I think that's another area where you need to be very careful. So those are just a kind of a flavour, really, of the kind of questions that we're getting at the moment. And if you've got any questions like that, then you do have access to the advice line. So do give us a call, do go online, fill out the online form, and the advisors are there. It's all sort of inclusive, and it's not going to cost you anything more. It's already part of your membership package. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about furlough leave, because today, or last night, the government sent out some additional guidance in relation to furloughed workers. So before they sent that out, this was the only thing we had to go on in relation to advising in relation to this job retention scheme. I think a few things to point out initially. It's a system for reimbursement, so it means that you will need to pay the employees with a view to claiming back 80% of their wage costs, up to the cap of £2,500 per month. The government has said they are in the process of building systems to make those payments to employers, but they don't have the facilities at the moment. So initially, you'll be paying with a view to claiming this back. It's also worth pointing out that it's got to be done with agreement, because this guidance explained that it was subject to existing law and depending on their contracts of employment. Now, the only way you could do this without agreement would be if you had specific layoff clauses in the contract, which would allow you to lay staff off without any pay, and therefore you could potentially look to furlough them or designate them as furloughed workers instead. Otherwise, it's a process of negotiation. I suppose the key point will be with furloughed workers that the alternative would potentially be redundancy situations, and therefore they may well benefit from this scheme in terms of allowing them to keep their jobs long term. So we're finding that most employees appear to be agreeable to this, they're getting the 80% potentially of their salary, and are not actually having to provide work. So, but it's important to note that it is with agreement, and you need to make sure that you're discussing that with employees and getting that agreement in place. I think what we're suggesting when you do put those agreements together is that you make it clear as well that the employee should remain ready and available to return to work if you should need them. So at the moment, if they're furloughed, they need to be furloughed, but they need to remain ready and available, because it might be a situation where you find you need certain employees back, as the restrictions start to loosen, and then you'd be able to call on those employees, because whilst they are furloughed, they are still employees, and they should be available. Also worth pointing out that it's not just the employees who've got to agree, you've got to agree. So if you get employees who are coming to you requesting this, but you've still got work and you can still operate during the crisis, then you don't have to furlough employees. So it's got to work both ways. It is dependent on your business need to actually put employees onto this scheme. So just to pick up on a few points that we had through from the guidance that came out this last night, they've made it clear that it's open to employers who had a PAYE scheme on the 28th of February this year. So if you weren't paying employees on the 28th of February this year and you've only started after that, then you won't qualify. In the same way that it only applies to employees who were employed on the 28th of February this year. If you've employed employees after that point, then this scheme won't apply. There's one exception, and that's if they were made redundant after the 28th of February because of the coronavirus, and then they've been reinstated. But generally, it's going to be only if you had employees in place and they were working for you on the 28th of February. We've had some clarification around minimum wage, because that's another question that we've been being asked. What if employees are on national minimum wage? Can we pay them less than the national minimum wage? And the answer is they're entitled to be paid. If you're paying them 100% their normal weekly earnings, if you're only paying them the 80%, then they're entitled to be paid 80% of their normal weekly earnings. And the rationale behind that really is on the basis that they're not actually doing any hours, and minimum wage is based on an hourly basis. So if they normally get the minimum wage for a week's work, then it's fine to still pay 80% of that, because they're not actually doing any hours. And it's been made clear that once you're on furloughed leave, you are on furloughed leave. You can't chop and change, if you like. So you can't do 50% of your work and then be furloughed for the rest of the time. It's either furlough or not. However, it can be done in blocks of 3 weeks. So it is possible to rotate after 3 weeks. But generally, we'd be saying, if you need to furlough people, furlough them. If you need to keep certain people on, then have a fair way of selecting which employees you keep on and which employees are on furlough, because that keeps it more straightforward. But obviously, if you want to talk about anything specific, like using the 3-week rotation, then I would suggest you perhaps give the legal advice helpline a call and speak to some of my colleagues who will be able to give you some further advice in relation to that. And I think that's it, really. So I think, as far as, that should give you a good overview of the package of products. But it's really to say, if you need us, we're there, use the helpline, and we'll do our best to get back to you as quickly as we can and give you the right advice in relation to what you should be doing at this time.
Thank you, Michael, for that. A couple of questions here. So one of them is it relates to the individual employees who are, of the member organisation. So is this advice available to all employees, or is it just a individual in the company?
Employees can call for access to the advice line, although we wouldn't be able to give them advice on employment law because of obviously the conflict with the employer.
Cool, that's fine. Another question here, which trying to figure out. So it's regarding chasing payments. So do we refer to the possible impact of COVID-19 on the business in our reporting system for potential risks and uncertainties? I think this relates to auditing and when they're chasing payments, and it's to do with the reporting systems. I don't know if you can help or guide on that.
I'm not sure, is that in relation to chasing HMRC for payments around furlough?
I think it's
or
just generic suppliers and chasing payments which are due to them.
As far as suppliers go, I mean, they would still be responsible for any payments that they owe to a business, regardless of the current crisis. I guess it's worth pointing out that you've got 6 years to bring a breach of contract claim against someone, so it's unlikely that this will have an impact on limitation. We would suggest you follow the normal routes for chasing a debt, sending a letter before claim. We've got a template on our website to do that for a business, and you'd normally give them 30 days to respond, and if they are impacted by the coronavirus, then I guess the moral thing to do, I suppose, at the moment would be to see if you can agree some kind of payment plan to allow to help out in the current situation.
And in terms of the templates, we have had some requests regarding a number of templates. Is this a login process, or how do I know you've shared the link earlier? But is there that link that you shared earlier? Are there many different templates there for members to access?
Yeah. So if you go to our main website, if you click on policyholders at the top of the page.
Yep.
And then online guides and templates, you'll see two sections. There's debt recovery and employment. If you click on the employment, there's no need to log in, and you'll see all the guides there and all the template letters. Same with the debt recovery, you'll have the guide and the template letters there.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much, Michael, for your time. That was very informative. Thank you for everyone who's tuned in as well. If there are any further questions, you've got Michael's details on the system as well, and I'll share my details in a bit as well. If you have, sorry, Michael, I know we've got a couple of minutes. Hopefully, I think there's one or two more questions. So, can a furlough employee be made redundant or have their workers' hours reduced if the work doesn't pick up when this is all over?
Yeah, I think I'm just looking now. I just found out how to look
at
the question.
Perfect.
So yeah, so Chris, I think so due to our business model, we would have a need to reduce working hours rather than make specific people redundant or furloughed. Unfortunately, the scheme doesn't cater for that situation. I think you'd have to perhaps look at whether or not there's any way that those employees can work. Certain employees can continue to work and certain employees are furloughed. Now, whether you decided to do that on a rotation system is another question. But personally, I would look at seeing whether or not those, you can get a set of employees who are coming to work getting 100% of pay and a set of employees who are furloughed, and the best way to select would be by asking for volunteers. If you get too many volunteers, then you're going to need some kind of objective selection criteria, but you can always give us a call if you want to talk through that in more detail.
Cool. Okay, and I think there's another question as well. I think you've got that on your screen.
Yeah, so so this one, can a furloughed employee be made redundant or have their working hours reduced if the work doesn't pick up? And the answer to that is yes. Employment law still applies as normal. So if you've got an employee who is furloughed and you decide as a business, actually, we're not going to be able to save this job, then you could enter into a period of consultation around redundancy in the normal way that you would in any other circumstances.
Okay, Thank you. Thank you for those questions. Thank you everyone for attending as well. I know, Michael, you need to go as well. Thank you for your time. A couple of updates from me just before we go. So we're working very closely with our members, with other chambers across the UK and the British Chamber of Commerce, who we're accredited to. There is a new page on our website. There's a business community toolkit on there, latest news, what the chamber's doing. There's more information on updates from us and some upcoming webinars as well. So do check that out. It's on the home page. So go onto the website and click on COVID-19, and that's another way to get to it. Also, you may be aware we did launch a new membership model earlier this year in January 2020, and you can see all the different membership tiers on the screen right there. If you have any questions regarding to the benefit we've talked about today or any other aspects of your membership or membership tiers, give me a call or give your account manager a call, or if there's someone on the line who's not a member, if you're interested, just give us a call and we can talk through the membership options with you. Michael, thanks again for your time. Thank you everyone else for joining. Hopefully see you all very soon. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Thanks, Hattie. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Michael, see you soon, yeah?
Yeah, thanks, Hattie.
Speak
Yeah,
soon.
I'll
That's
speak
good.
soon. All right.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.